Today I have a quick history lesson for you about a certain historian and a bit of the history he recorded. And I'm going to pick something very important out of it, which I think is very important for you. Now, the historian in question is someone called Tacitus, pronounced Tacitus in Latin. He was born Anno Domini, year 56, and he died sometime after the year 120 AD. He became a senator of Rome. That's the ancient Rome, the great, the powerful, the empire. And he was a great Roman historian. His work is well corroborated by other historians, and we know a lot about Roman history thanks to him. One of the events that he wrote about was the Great Fire of Rome. The Great Fire of Rome happened in the year 64 AD during the reign of Emperor Nero. And this fire is significant because it burned a huge section of Rome, and entire parts of the city were completely destroyed, reduced to ash. So it was rumored that Nero himself was to blame for the fire, and he was blamed because he was a psychopath, and because he was a psychopath, he turned around and blamed the Christians, someone who likely had absolutely nothing to do with it. Now, Tacitus goes on to describe what Nero did to the Christians. He writes in his book Annals, book 15, "Consequently, to get rid of the report that Nero started the fire himself, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus. And a most mischievous superstition, thus checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, but even in Rome, where all things hideous and shameful from every part of the world find their center and become popular." So, that's the section of text that we are looking at. Tacitus goes on to describe what Nero actually did to the Christians. Go ahead and read it if you find out. But here's what we know just from the text here in front of us. Number one, Christians lived in Rome in AD 64. There was a sizable population of them, enough of them that everyone else in Rome knew who they were. Number two, they worshipped a man known as Christus. Gee, that sounds familiar. Who's that? Number three, this Christus suffered the extreme penalty. And number four, Christus died under Pontius Pilatus. That sounds familiar. And five, this Christian movement began shortly after the death of Christus in Judea. Number six, the Christians believed in some mischievous superstition, which was checked and then broke out again. Okay, the belief in whatever this superstition was checked by Nero's persecution, and then it broke out again afterwards. And number seven, Tacitus has a very low opinion of Christians, because he's a jerk. So, looking at this, what does this mean? What it means for us is that Christianity had a significant population within Rome within about 30 years of the death of Christ. We know that Christ died under Pontius Pilate by crucifixion. And the Christian movement was founded in Judea around an event which occurred after Christ's death, but was related to Christ in some way. Now, take a look at this narrative for a moment. Can you see how much of the Christian narrative is corroborated here by a hostile witness as background information to confirmed Roman history without referencing the Bible once? There are only two things missing from this narrative that would turn it into the gospel message. Now, I know my history and I know my Bible, so I know that the undefined, most mischievous superstition, which Tacitus refers to, can only be either one or both of these things, and they are the claim that Jesus rose from the dead, or the claim that Jesus claimed to be God. I urge you to look up Tacitus and the Annals, Book 15, so that you know something about Tacitus and what he wrote. So that, whether you're a believer like me, a believer not like me, or a not believer, you can know that when people claim that Jesus is an abstraction, or that Christianity didn't exist until after the 1st century AD, or that it developed somewhere other than Judea itself, or something like that, you will know that that is a lie. Thank you for joining me. I hope you learned something. I hope you had fun, and I hope you come to know the historical Christ.